we heard from Owen there's people still demonstrating on this anniversary. Do you think that there's still enough anger in those who support Donald Trump to potentially see another January 6th?
I don't know that we'll see another January 6th. The prosecution of those defendants, the people who have been arrested, kind of had a chilling effect. They've dismantled, the Federal Justice Department has dismantled the Proud Boys organization. It's taken aim at the Oath Keepers and pretty much convicted the head of those organizations. And those were, according to investigations, two of the driving forces behind a lot of the violence. I think Trump himself bears watching, however, because he's still very much putting the country at risk by his rhetoric, suggesting that that January 6th was an inside job, suggesting that he was innocent of anything, and that all his people who entered the Capitol that day were just tourists. I mean, it's beyond the absurd, but we still have polls showing that 3/4 of all Republicans believe that this was a rigged event and that Trump had no culpability, while about 50 to 60% of everybody else believes that we should not forget about this and that American democracy is at risk. So I think no matter what, we're looking at some very tenuous political times. Could it happen again? Possibly. Is it likely? Probably not at this point, but we never know. We didn't think it was likely back then, so we'll have to see.
And it was a stark warning to Democrats, wasn't it, that the country could be under threat in America. And at the same time, it kind of created a blueprint, perhaps, that if people want to do it again, maybe they could even do it in a more organised way, less chaotic, you know. Do you think it's possible that it's paving the way for something bigger?
I think it's absolutely possible. I think one of the problems that we have, it's a hallmark and also a liability with American democracy, is that it operates more or less on a handshake. Transfer of power, yes, we agree to do that collectively, but there really are no forces that prevent people from doing what they did, and that could prevent a further catastrophe like this, especially when you have people walking the halls of Congress who were there that day, who are now attempting to minimize it because it damages the person that they want to be president. So I think the divisiveness in and of itself is a problem. That's going to be a problem that's going to be really, really difficult to overcome. The fact that American democracy does not operate on force, but operates on trust, is another problem, because that trust has pretty much evaporated, and a lot of it went with it on January 6th.
You mentioned how divided America is still over what happened on January 6th 3 years ago. You've got nearly half the country who feel these people are political prisoners, the other half who feel they should be brought to justice. Do you think that the subsequent arrests have now been over 1,000 will deter extremist groups from committing another attack?
I think it will, but the problem that you still have lingering out there is Trump himself and the possible prosecution of a former sitting president. Now, we in the U.S. suggest that no person is above the law, but we're going to put that to the test, because you have a man who is supported by probably 1/3 of the country, including some people in the halls of Congress, who may be seen in the docks for his role in January 6th. And any way you slice it, it's going to be a difficult, divisive prosecution, particularly among those who believe that he's not culpable and those who believe that a sitting president should be nowhere near the criminal justice system. So it's a huge, huge problem. We've still got a lot of risk. It remains to be seen how it's all going to play out.
How do you think it's affected the American psyche when we look back to that day and how things have evolved since then, given that America is seen as the flag bearer for the democratic world? Has it changed the way Americans view things, view their own country?
I think it has changed the way America has viewed itself. There have been polls that have suggested that people now are more accepting of political violence, which was something that was relatively unheard of throughout this country, absent of the Civil War. We don't do that here. We aren't supposed to do that here, and yet it happened here. So holding ourselves up as beacons of democracy really is kind of hypocritical at this point, unless we find a way back from this abyss. And finding that way back is going to be really, really challenging, given the fact that we have two sets of people who view this incident completely differently, and with two separate sets of facts. We know what happened on January 6th because we documented it, but there are people who don't believe their own eyes and would rather believe people that they are invested in to tell them what happened and how to feel about that day.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Joseph Williams, really appreciate your time.
My pleasure.